Zip, Z-I-F. And just want to make a quick video here with regard to Israelite preterism. I don't know of any. If you know of some Israelite preterists out there, please give them my account info and or let them send one of my videos, this particular video, in fact. What I'm looking at here is some Christian preterists on YouTube uh, that are discussing the Josephus and desolation of Jerusalem, which is an interesting concept with regard to what's happening, what may have happened over there, as far as the when I got into high school back in the 70s, I began to get into the Jesus movement. Okay, I was a Jesus freak. I was passing out flyers, praying over my car, uh, studying the Bible like all get out. You know, I joined a Bible study group in the high school, which met once or twice a week. I joined a charismatic, what do they call it, Pentecostal, Protestant church. You know what I'm saying? And also, I joined a Christian group when I went to college afterward called InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, which was very instrumental in my studying. It taught me how to study the Bible a little bit better. It's called the inductive Bible study method. And what it entailed was reading certain portions of the scripture and then comparing it to the Greek in the Strong's Concordance and deciphering every word, pulling out the essence, as it were. That's what they teach you in InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, you know. And I went to some conferences over in Illinois. I went to high school up near Cleveland, up there. That's where I came into this Jesus movement, and I got into it, and you know, and then I joined the Air Force, and I tried to follow the scriptures and be a disciple in the Air Force. You know, got out the Air Force, and so it come right down to my trying to be a good Christian, trying to figure it out. You know, it was a journey that I was going through, and just like these brothers right here, they go on, all of us and you out there listening, and going through a journey. So one day I went on the web and I was looking at some YouTube videos, and I came upon a YouTube video of a brother in Houston teaching about the Israelite movement, the Israelite Christian movement, you know. So from that point, I began to delve into the Israelite movement, and I joined the group, one of their groups, which this gentleman was an actual member of, and that's the group called Israel United in Christ. And I was a member of that group for like 5 years or so, beginning back in the 20 somethings, maybe 2001 or 2016, 2015, I think it was 2015, I began to get into the Israelite movement. Now, as far as preterism is concerned, I became a convert to preterism through these messianic Christian evangelical Protestant brothers like these here that we're going to listen to for a minute and discuss and kind of bounce. This is going to be like a bouncy. We're going to listen to their video and talk about it. Okay. Basically, what I'm trying to convey is that Israelite uh, theology is not that much different from Christian theology in certain aspects, but it's also very different from Christian quote unquote theology. Okay? Now, with regard to this Josephus account of the desolation and the destruction of Jerusalem, supposedly quote unquote in 70 AD, that's an interesting aspect of this too. But what I'm pointing out is that I haven't been a convert to preterism for that long. I think it's been less than a year that I became a preterist, but I remain an Israelite. And that's why I asked you if you know of any Israelite preterists out there, please share this video or give them my information or my channel, share my channel or videos with them so that we can collaborate perhaps. I would love to collaborate with these brothers, but it would be kind of fruitless. I wouldn't want to cast aspersions. I'm going to use this video of this brother. His name is JT. I think his name is JT, right? Am I wrong there? Hold on. JT follows JC. So his name, initials of his name is JT. And he follows JC, which is an allusion to the Christian faith. Okay? But with a bent of preterism. And I praise the Most High God that I have this to occupy my time. I am 70 years old, nearing the end of my life, sooner or later, probably sooner rather than later. I ask for your prayers. I don't say I'm right and you're wrong. I just tell you what I see in the scriptures from the Israelite perspective alongside this preterist understanding. Okay? And it's a little different than what the messianic Jewish converts to Christianity and the Protestant evangelical, non-denominational, what they call charismatic Catholics and Catholics proper, which is what I was brought up originally under, the Catholic understanding of the faith. Okay? But I just want to say there's no hatred here. I don't hate these brothers. I don't hate the Catholics. I don't hate the Israelites that are pure Israelites, as it were. You know, I want to increase in the grace and the knowledge of this faith, building up a better, stronger, more confident approach to this. And that's what I want to communicate through these videos. I'm not trying to build myself up or build up an audience or following. You know? Praise the Most High. I don't want your money. I don't want your accolades or your praise. I want your prayers, please. Because I'm just a man, just like everybody else, man. Okay, I'm going to turn this on and then make commentary over this video right here, which I have on the screen for you. All right, praise the Most High, man. And let me see if I can make it a little bigger. Praise the Most High, y'all. Let's see. Yeah. See what that look like. What it look like. Okay. Try this now. Let's see. All right. Maybe that's better. So.
The thing is up.
This is JT and one of his guests, which is Bible Scribe. JT is at the top. There's initials there. The gentleman below him his channel is called Bible Scribe. And I am
are we live?
To this channel.
I'm trying to see if it's on my phone live.
I do recommend this brother with regard to the preterist understanding. Even though it's bent toward this Christian.
Okay, we're live. We're live.
All right.
World.
How are you guys doing tonight? Got a treat for y'all. Got Bible Scribe in the house. And by in the house, I mean in studio. Well, anyways, David, Bible Scribe, welcome to the YouTube live chat.
Awesome. Thank you, JT. It's great to be here tonight. I feel privileged, actually. This is one of the first. I've done this a couple times, but it's really a privilege to be on your channel and be in front of your listeners. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. We've already had.
I wouldn't mind getting on one of these discussion panels with these brothers, not for the sake of argumentation, but just for the sake of sharing a little bit different point of view of the preterist understanding from the Israelite side of the house, as it were. Okay, let's continue.
Some good stuff going on behind the scenes here, but it's going to be great.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like that we don't want to use all the good stuff up before we actually go on live. But yeah, so it's very cool. I said, so when I was first looking into some of these topics, I was looking for, all the information I could get about what happened in 70 AD. And it just so happened, I was doing a web search and I was thinking I was looking up, stuff about Josephus, and I found Bible Scribe. But before I knew who he was, I was watching his video. I sent it to a couple of my friends and I said, look what Josephus said. And so it's very cool when somebody in my chat said, hey, you should hook up with Bible Scribe. He's very good. He's very knowledgeable as far as the history and the Bible. Look him up. And I looked him up and I said, I found your channel. And I was like, oh, he is good. And I was like, he looks familiar too. Yeah, he was the guys who was talking about Josephus. I guess there's probably a couple-year-old video. So yeah, I guess it's cool that you obviously put that stuff up there because I'm sure a lot more people are searching for that stuff now.
Oh yeah, man. It's I think kind of probably the video you're talking about, and it's called something like Timeline of the Years Surrounding 70 AD. That's pretty old. It's like 2 years old or so. So it's really neat to see people coming back to that one, but. It has a ton of amazing information that came out of the works of Josephus and some other historians of that time period. But yeah, people are now really seeing that video and videos like it. That one particular, I've seen people, promote in interesting different channels, for instance, Telegram, all these other places. So that one gets a lot of traction. People really do enjoy seeing that historical view of exactly what happened during that time period. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So before we get fully into that, I want to ask you. So you seem like obviously you're not new to the faith, and I'm based on what I heard from you. You had the traditional view, or like, I don't know if it's traditional or not, but I mean the view that most everyone else had. You believe that these things were going to happen in the future, we're like in the end days, because everyone has always thought we've been in the end days since like forever. Like, what really woke you up to? Wait a minute. Is Jesus really talking about 2,000 years from now, or is he talking about now?
Yeah, well, it actually, JT, was some of the exact same stuff we're talking about, and Josephus is definitely a big part of that. So I do have a video on exactly this story, and I tell it all. It's actually one of the first that has anything to do with this topic that I put on my channel, because I was coming to that realization too, and just like, I got to do something about this. So I told the story there, but I did grow up a Protestant, American Christian guy, and from a young age. Like, I don't even know when I truly accepted Christ as my savior. My parents, my dad, he was the kind of dad that really took a lot of time with me and really spent time with me with the Bible. He would do these drawings on flashcards that we would go over with scripture verses.
Just a quick interjection here. The Christians, and I was one at that point back then, think that they are not Catholics. I beg to differ with regard to that. Okay? All right, let's continue.
Verses on them. I remember them to this day. And so, yeah, he was very attentive to me. And I always understood about God. I was really, it just made sense to me, right? God and Jesus and all those things from a natural kind of church upbringing. So I accepted that very early. My dad says it was around the age of 3. If it was or wasn't, that's not important to me. The fact is that I love God and his son, Jesus Christ, and what he did for me. So that's all that's important. And I've just, I've grown all my life, I hope, with that knowledge and felt very secure about that, So that foundation has always been there. But it's interesting that just, about the time I started the YouTube channel, Bible Scribe, so we're talking about 4 or 5 years ago, I started having this appetite that I couldn't really explain any other way than it was just like I was compelled to read more, to dig in for myself. We spend a lot of our lives kind of just going with the flow of whatever we're brought up in and knowing, but not necessarily knowing for ourselves. And that's not bad necessarily. You're accepting the instruction of your parents and teachers and all that. But at the same time, at some point, you do start having to dig for yourself. So that's what I started doing. But it literally was this compulsion. I was reading the Bible over and over and over again. So I don't know now. I've probably read through the whole Bible, I don't know, a dozen times or more. Portions of the Bible, for instance, when this started to come to an understanding.
Another thing I want to point out. The Bible these men are talking about is the Protestant Bible, which was changed from the original 1611 King James Bible. The Protestant people, they took out 14 books for some odd, they have reasoning behind it. And when I was a Christian, I figure when I was a quote unquote Christian, futurist, we'll call it a futurist. There's the futurist and there's the preterists. The futurists think that Christ hasn't come yet and that the rapture hasn't come yet. The preterists think that the rapture and the kingdom of reign, 1,000-year reign already took place. And we're waiting for the end of the Gog-Magog extinction event. That's preterist. That's what I believe now. But,
Ending of the historical fulfillments. I've probably read through Daniel and Revelation at least 25 times each. So it's just like.
So, yeah, that's the Bible these people are talking about. They're talking about a Bible that is not the Bible, the entirety of the Bible. They don't realize these preterist brothers here, which I respect. I highly respect their views. That's why I'm listening to their videos. That's how I came into this understanding of the preterist point of view. As an Israelite, and I've been formulating the Israelite perspective with respect to this preterist understanding. That's why I'm reaching out to see if there's other Israelite preterists out there that we can collaborate and help each other. Okay? What I'm saying is these 66 books of the Protestant Bible is not the whole Bible. And that's a problem. Okay? But they don't realize that. They're still under the spell of the Protestant Reformation, quote unquote, and the removal of the Apocrypha. The Apocrypha was and is, in my estimation, canon for like 300 years before these Protestant Christians took it out. And that's where this Protestant Bible, which is so prevalent today all over the world, just like the image, okay, I won't say nothing about the image, that's another story, but this Protestant Bible is the standard. They call it the standard, okay? Whereas the 1611 also contains those 66 books, plus the 14 books of the Apocrypha, totaling 80 books, 80. Let's continue.
Like I was, my appetite was big. That's not bragging. It's just, I was like, I couldn't get enough. I was like, I got to read this again. I think I'm understanding more, you know?
Yeah.
And then something broke. And that was interesting because it has something to do with the Seventh-day Adventists. And you're probably going to think like, well, that's weird. Wait, where are we going? But they have a book called The Great Controversy. You may have heard of that. And some, you know, missionary or something left one in my mailbox one day. So I got this book out and I'm looking at it. I'm like, I'm just going to read it. You know, I want to know what the Seventh-day Adventists know anyway. I want to see what they think, you know, what's their perspective on this. Well, the first chapter, if I'm not mistaken, of that book was all about Josephus and the events of 70 AD, because that's a heavy part of their belief system. Now, they have some things that go, as far as I'm concerned, into incorrect territory, but that stuff, as I was reading, I was like, holy crap, I didn't even know some of the stuff they were talking about had happened when we're talking about the destruction of the temple.
Now notice, these are highly intelligent and sincere people here. You know, these brothers and sisters in the Preterist Christian movement, whether they're converts from the typical Jewish Israeli standpoint into the Messianic, which believe that Christ is the Messiah. Believe it or not, there's a lot of Jewish Israeli types that believe Christ is the Messiah, and they call themselves Messianics. So let's continue.
And, you know, what happened with the Roman armies and the events surrounding that, I was like, there's miracles happening here, and I didn't know about it. So that was the real catalyst for my journey into this historical fulfillment mindset. And we can use the word preterism, although I don't always fall into the typical preterism camps, you know, like full preterism or partial. But that's kind of what got me started, if that helps.
No, that's good. I mean, I think it's funny that you say that, because it's kind of like it's obviously the topic that I put up there was that I think that, and I've said this over and over again, and it's funny because I have a similar background where I grew up in a Christian home, with Christian schools, and I had never heard anything about 70 AD.
Right.
And I would say, and that's when I said, but now as I became a man and became, like, after 2020 and all the things that we witness in the world and all the you know, so much of us have just say, like, something's not right. We've been lied to about a lot of things. And I had to basically decide who can I trust at this point. And then I realized I couldn't really trust anybody except for God. And I was just like, God, you gotta give me the truth. You got to give me the eyes to see it. And I started to read my Bible again. And then I started to question, like, wait a minute, I grew up in church and
Now, the history that I was telling you about myself, before I became an Israelite Christian, I went back into Catholicism. I ran back into the Catholic tradition, heavy. Okay? That's when I found this Israelite understanding as a strong Catholic, quote unquote. Okay, let's continue.
I don't remember ever talking about Genesis 6. I don't remember them talking about anything about, like, the stuff that we're like.
And that was about 10 years ago, approximately. That's how long I've been an Israelite, approximately.
getting into now, and just the kind of the more spiritual aspects of the Bible. You know, just so much of it.
Yeah.
And I just realizing that where did my church get any of the stuff that they do? Because I don't read any of that in here. And then so you start.
I just want to give out a disclaimer here. I'm not showing this video to make fun of these brothers and what they believe. They are strongly dedicated and sincere about their belief in this preterist Christian point of view that they have, which is a Protestant perspective. Okay? They think it's not Catholic. They think that because they're Protestants, they are not Romanized Christians. Again, I beg to differ in that regard, and we'll get to that later.
Start to kind of unpack like the lies in society, then you're realizing you were doing a lot of traditions that really didn't even fit anywhere. Like I'm not even sure why we did any of that stuff.
Mm.
And then it wasn't until sort of recently that I even heard anyone say that Jesus already came back. Like
Right.
I was like, what? What do you mean? Because I think that was part of what woke me up, was like that maybe the pandemic stuff and the consolidation of like powers in the world, and obviously the New World Order stuff. I thought this has got to be the end times.
You know, it's funny when
Some of the things that brought me into the preterist perspective and point of view that I now hold is videos like this. Also videos about archaeology and altered timelines and histories. Also, back about 6 or 7 years ago, I became a flat earther. You know. And then me and my brother Elisha, in this little community, through his influence, we created a calendar that we feel is based completely upon the Bible, and I have it on my. We have it on our Facebook group listed there. If you're interested, it's 99 cents. It's just a little pamphlet kind of thing that goes into it with an explanation of what the lunar Israelite calendar is all about. And that's the Facebook group is called Little Sanctuary Israelites. Okay, in case you're interested.
when you said that, you hadn't even heard the word preterist. I find it funny looking back now. I realized that maybe
Preterist is spelled Preterist. In case you were wondering.
maybe 8 to 10 years before my journey, I did know a guy who had mentioned preterism to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't understand. I didn't know what the word meant, honestly. And that guy was a Reformed Baptist. That was his kind of denomination. And so it's interesting now that I have gone through this, I have found that there are some Reformed Baptists that do believe in.
So this is what this brother's saying. He's saying the idea of the preterist understanding has been around for a long time. It's just now beginning to catch fire because of the social media component.
In this type of eschatology, or have. And I believe some Church of Christ, if I'm not mistaken. There's a few, even some Presbyterians actually hold the view and have.
Eschatology means the study of the last times or the end times, biblically speaking, prophecy.
Held the view from the beginning, but it's interesting. So, yeah.
No, but I do wonder, I guess, as kind of somebody who is more on the conspiratorial side than probably yourself.
Are you sure about that?
Well, maybe not. Maybe I don't know. I guess the point is, like, it makes me very suspicious that we were not told about 70 AD. It's almost like that, like them removing certain, like, and I'm one of those people who I used to say, oh, they didn't remove books of the Bible. And then I looked in, I was like, yeah, they did. I mean, I'm one of those people who stand on the Bible and say, this gives you enough to know Jesus. So I'm not trying to tell anybody to worry about all this other stuff, but I'm saying they clearly did take stuff out. And I was saying like that if Jesus is talking about the second temple, and he most certainly is, why is there nothing written about that in the current Bible we have? Especially if John wrote the book of Revelation in 95, why didn't he write anything about the thing that Jesus said was going to happened? Or just the fact that like, hey, this is not in the Bible, but historically we should talk about the things that Jesus said that came true in order to give you more reason to believe that he's legit, that everything he's, that he said this was going to happen and this happened. So why do you think that we don't have, why don't they tell us about this?
Well, I think there's actually a few reasons. For one, the Jewish people would not want you to know, right? They don't want you to know. In fact, when I have started to study the early church fathers, I found multiple references from them. And now we're talking about Christians who lived in 100 AD or 200 AD.
Mm-hmm.
I found multiple references where they actually literally tell you the Jews are changing the scriptures right now. Like they're in the process of changing their books so that it hides the Messiah, essentially. And so they were talking about that they could trust the Septuagint version, but not the current Hebrew texts of their time because the Jews were changing them. So we know the Jews wanted to hide the fact that Jesus did what he said he was going to do. And especially 70 AD would have obviously been a shame for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we were talking about just before this about they felt like their temple should have been a place of protection for them. But in the end, God allowed it to be totally destroyed in 70 AD. So they have a huge problem with anyone understanding that those things happened back then and realizing the gravity of that. But then, what's interesting is what I'm trying to think how to couch, because I'm working on a video series right now that has to do with some of the hidden things of our history and where my research has led me to believe that they have hidden parts of history. They have hidden narratives they don't want us to understand and the reasons for that. But our modern churches, by the way, are very hand in hand with the Catholic Church, whether you know it or not. There's a movement, it's called from the last century ecumenism, where the Catholic Church in a huge way partnered with large denominations of Protestants and partnered with them in the way they teach, the formats of church, a lot of different guidance that was given. So we know that the Vatican and the Catholic Church also wants their hands in the pot, right?
So yeah, this is another aspect of the Catholic religion, which I partook of a little bit. It's called charismatic Catholicism, which is similar to what Pentecostal, charismatic, and evangelical Christians is about, And I was in that area too, I was chilling with that because I was originally, and then I became a full Catholic after all that. So, okay.
Right. And so it behooves them to also keep some of this stuff, hidden enough from us to where we follow after the direction they want us to head. So there's a lot we could get into there. It could go down a long trail, but that's just a taste, I think.
Right. Wasn't that, so as far as I can tell too, would you have like, I got the names for escaping me, but I know there's a lot of very prominent pastors who've been connected with Israel themselves. And maybe that's another reason why these things don't get talked about, because who was it? I'm trying to think of like the one prominent pastor who was basically saying like that Jesus never told them he was God. So therefore they can still be under this old covenant. And you're like,
if you've got pink salt and apple cider vinegar in your kitchen and you're not using this recipe, you're throwing away your chance to be summer.
Oh my gosh. Like, it's like,
sorry about the commercials, you guys.
Talk about being led by, your pocketbook, because it's like the things that they're willing to say in order to protect this relationship with them. And it's like I remember even my father was getting this mail from like Franklin Graham saying, send money over to Israel.
Yeah. And John Hagee, all these guys.
That person there, John Hagee, I used to live in San Antonio, for a number of years in Texas, and I attended that guy's church over there in San Antonio, John Hagee. I forget the name of the church, but it's an evangelical Christian Protestant, blah 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 type church, and he advocates close devotion to the Jewish Israelis over in the middle, in the Palestina up there, the Middle Earth over there. Okay, so yeah, that's what he's alluding to here. Pastors that promote devotion to the Jewish Israelis over there, thinking that they are actually related to the Messiah of the Bible, that they are blood relatives of his. Okay, which I have found to be erroneous, but let's continue.
Guys.
Yeah, maybe it's John Hagee was the one who was saying, and you're just like, I can't even believe that anyone could say that and claim to be a Christian. But like, so you have these. So is that why, like, possibly yes, you have like the connections with the Catholic Church and the connections with like Israel, the nation? And I heard, I was like hearing people talk about the red heifers and stuff, like that they were almost like excited. Oh, I guess that means an Antichrist is about to come, and that means Jesus is coming back, and like so we're gonna. It's very similar to like the idea of like the Sabbatean Jews and the Frankists, who thought if they're really bad, therefore the Messiah is going to come back sooner. Like, is that almost like what the modern Christian church is saying? We're going to root for this all to happen, so therefore, or maybe even help fund it, so there will be a third temple and there will be an Antichrist. Right. And therefore, Jesus is going to come back soon. When you're like, oh my gosh, that's like that's really backwards thinking, I think.
Well, yeah, and even to be specific to our topic of Josephus, I believe he does record about the zealot groups of Jews in the first century, and that's exactly the mindset they had. They were fighting Rome intentionally to try to force God's hand in a way, to bring such conflict that they would be in jeopardy, and then they thought God would step in with the Messiah. And they knew that was coming at that time period, by the way, because we see that in the Dead Sea Scrolls when we read about the prophecies right before the time of Christ. They were expecting that Messiah then, right? And so, yeah, the same mindset of those Jews then has persisted even to the modern time. It's really interesting.
I was wondering this, and I'm not sure if this is just relates to the church at large, but I was kind of thinking about in
not only the Jews there in the Palestina, the Middle Earth over there, but Jews everywhere, which is testified by the wise men. Okay.
When Paul talks about the strong delusion, and I couldn't help but think, like, because I think I saw your video when you were saying that, like it was like the Romans didn't really want to destroy Jerusalem like completely like they did. Or at least they say they didn't. I mean, obviously you can believe what you want, but it makes sense because the Romans didn't obviously set up, the governors and prefects, and they wanted to rule over these people. They didn't want to rule over ashes. So like, right. So they would have so you think they would have much rather have just kept them under control, but the Jews and the Zealots were fighting so hard against them. And obviously there was like a spirit put in the Roman troops. But I started to think about that, like, could the strong delusion have been, I mean, obviously it could be bigger than this. Could the strong delusion was that he literally put a delusion in the people that said he's going to save us. So they're going to fight so hard to save this. And he would never let his temple be destroyed. And it's like when Paul's saying that those that don't love the truth, will believe the lie. God will send them a strong delusion.
And it's not just one delusion. Okay, it's not the globe by itself. It's not the monetary system or the religious system or the political system by itself. It's not theological systems by themselves. There are many strong delusions out there, but there are some big ones like what he's talking about here. There's some big ones. For example, Mohammedanism. That's a big one. Buddhism. Hinduism. Those are strong delusions as far as Christians, quote unquote, are concerned. Israelites too. But the delineations of these things and the understanding should not be a system of division. We have to strive to be at peace with all men as much as we possibly can. Okay, that's not always possible. You're going to get mad sometimes, and that's okay. It's okay. The Bible says, be angry, but sin not.
And what do you think? Do you think there's any validity to that?
Yeah, JT, I do. I mean, the thing is, the strong delusion is a really hard thing to just pinpoint, right? So I have a hard time doing that, but I think that could be part of it for sure. And something ran across my mind as you were saying that, but yeah, the Romans had an interesting relationship with the Jews through the first century, and Josephus talks all about this. They actually, the Jews became a real annoyance to Rome. They didn't, like you said, they didn't really want to snuff out a race of people or anything like that. Mm-hmm. There were very equitable relationships between wealthy Jews and the Roman Empire. There were some Jews that had a lot of wealth and had built standing private armies that the Romans would actually use for battles. You know, they'd pay them as mercenaries, like a PMC.
Now, what he's talking about here is the Jews, but there were different kinds and different levels of Jews back then. Okay?
Or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of thing existed. Now, there's other times where the Jews revolted a few different times in the first century, like in Alexandria, for instance, and the one in Rome, of course, but where they just became this annoyance that the Romans had to deal with. And then in Josephus, at the time of 70 AD, when Titus has his troops in the city, and they're starting to get close to the temple, Titus literally tells them, and you can read this in Josephus, I think it's in the Wars of the Jews, I think it's book 5 or 6. That's the area where it talks about 70 AD. He says to his soldiers, no, don't burn down the temples. I mean, that's good stuff. There's no reason for us to take this out on the buildings. And he didn't. And he also said some stuff about not killing them all. It was just about taking them prisoner and taking over the city and stopping this rebellion. But it did say in that same passage, it says that his soldiers were driven with a mad rage that no one could explain, and they went through slaughtering the Jews. You know, as they were crowding into the temple for this quote protection they thought they were going to get from God. Of course, these are apostate Jews from Babylon that they would speak good things about God out of this side of their mouth, and on this side they would go and do, weep for Tammuz and do pagan idol worship, things like that. And so these were not good guys, but they thought they were going to get that protection, like you said, and it just didn't work that way. It didn't happen. And some of those things, like we're talking about, these soldiers driven by blind rage, they just go into the temple and they slaughter every priest that had crowded into the temple. Some of those things you just can't explain it. That's some of the things I saw that was like, God, how come I missed all that? Because that's amazing. That's miraculous stuff.
Right. Well, because it's almost like that both sides are really fighting past their best interest, clearly.
Yeah.
So it kind of gave me like a thought back to like reading some of the wars or battles in the Old Testament where it's like God threw their troops into confusion, and you really don't know what that means, but it's like in the same way, if he threw other armies into confusion, is it possible that he put a spirit in the Roman troops to say, no, don't leave anybody alive, go in there and do this thing? And in the same way, he sent a delusion to, almost like in the way that he hardened Pharaoh's heart. So like if Pharaoh was already in rebellion against God, he said, no, against all your best interests, like everybody knows, just let those people go. But no, he couldn't do it because God was going to use his rebellion in order to show his power off. And when you see it, two opposing forces, that it really, they didn't have a lot to gain by having it end that way.
No, yeah,
And,
it was
and,
bad.
unless it wasn't their gain, it was God's purpose to do exactly what he said was going to happen.
Right. It perfectly fulfilled the words.
Josephus was a historian, supposedly a Jewish historian. So his books, his
Of the prophets,
histories
yeah.
are extra biblical, just like Enoch and Jubilees and Jasher. Okay, those are extra biblical. They're not part of the actual 80 books of the canon as far as most Israelites are concerned. Okay, now these brothers here believe that the Apocrypha is extra biblical, and that's a problem. That's a very big problem, and that is distorting their understanding as far as I'm concerned. Okay, praise the Most High.
Yeah. So as we get into that, you might as well. I said if you got the list, I said so. David's got a list, and that was one of the cool things that he unlike me, I've read portions of Josephus, and I've relied on other people to. I mean, I'll be honest. At one point, I got the Antiquity of the Jews, and I didn't realize that wasn't in there. I didn't realize there was a separate book about that.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I've got to like Leviticus, and I'm like, I'm going to fast forward to the end, and then it was like, wait, it's not in there. So David actually has read Josephus himself and has made a great list, and not just Josephus, but the other Roman historians of the time to confirm some of the things. And
Okay, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit.
recently is that like all of a sudden, like it does make me think almost like in the culture, in the discourse we have these days, where it's much easier to label somebody an ist or an ism or whatever else than to actually address what they said, because that's typically, it's like we can have nuanced arguments about or discussions about like eschatology. And I think that the cool thing is I remember you saying this, and I believe the same way, because if you and I both have,
that's where the distortion comes in. They believe the 66 books, most of them, I would guess, are the canon. They believe the Apocrypha, the 14 books that the Protestants took out, is extra biblical. Is not canon. So that's a major flaw. A very, very big flaw, which is coloring their understanding in a limiting kind of fashion.
had the futurist view before today, then we're going to extend grace to the people who have the futurist view now, right? Like that, without actually saying like, well, you're not a Christian now. I don't think you could even be saved if you don't believe what Jesus said in Matthew 24, literally, because we had to get to where we are at some point. But then when we've gone to where we're at, the same level of grace is not always extended. Where like people are like, I mean, I certain people I'm kind of close with locally, I just like,
right.
How do I bring this up without like thinking they're gonna think, oh, you're not a Christian anymore, you know?
You know, and there's something that has happened, JT, actually prior to you and I getting into these topics, and I found it out when I started to learn about preterism after I had seen Josephus in the Bible and started to think this stuff might have happened. You know. I found that there's kind of a wave of preterism that happened before we came along, you know, and so there's a few, you know, older teachers out there that I think there was a wave of preterism around the 2012 to 14 time frame, and it kind of died back off.
I'm going to go forward a little bit here.
soldiers at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have this situation where you have pagans that have invaded the entire city, Seljuk Turks controlling the city of Jerusalem, and then the quote Christians trying to get in there and take it back over, and all these crazy things happening. So I'm 100% confused about the Battle of Gog and Magog, to be totally honest with you, JT.
Well, I'm glad that it's not just me being dumb, because I think that
No.
the Gog Magog stuff has always confused me. Even I was reading back through Ezekiel recently, and I was just like, man, I'm even more confused because I'm trying.
That's what I mean. The Gog Magog prophecy is a separate one from that of the Armageddon prophecy. Okay? And the Apocrypha is the stamp that sheds light on this confusion that they're having about Gog Magog. Why is that? Because Gog Magog is the extinction of everything. Gog Magog is the dissolution of all things, all living things, all men. Okay? Everything. Gone. Heaven, earth, everything. Gone. The old heaven and the old earth, that is. Whereas the confusion that they're experiencing regarding Gog Magog has to do with the fact that they don't believe the Apocrypha is canonical. And I'm going to go into that a little bit, because the Apocrypha solidifies and brings to fruition the fact that the Armageddon is a different event apart from the Gog Magog event. And that's where the Apocrypha comes in. If you're missing the Apocrypha, you're missing a big part of the picture, yo.
Trying to like view it with this new mindset, and I'm still having a struggle with it.
Yeah.
Because the thing that was crazy is my buddy Alpha talks on one of our podcasts, because he believes that the Camp of the Saints are in New Jerusalem, and it's somewhere over the North Pole, somewhere in the.
See, that's what I mean. They're advocating that the Camp of the Saints and the beloved city is up in the frozen tundra of the North, quote unquote, North Pole. That is ludicrous and extremely confusing. Do you wonder? Isn't any wonder these guys are confused about it, and people like them? They are confused about it. My recommendation to these gentlemen is get into the Apocrypha. Get into the essence of the Apocrypha, man. In particular, the fourth book of Ezra, which is also known as the second book of Ezra. Esdras. In particular, chapter 7. Chapter 7 of 2nd Esdras is the spotlight that distinguishes between what the Armageddon event is and what the Gog Magog event is. I'm going to go forward just a little bit here. This is how
to get in shape. The best way to boost your metabolic rate and get in shape is not keto. It's not.
Which is taking the dead from down there and allowing them to go up to heaven into the rest of the Father. So yeah, to me, that makes 100% sense, and I think is the correct way to look at those passages.
See what I mean? They have to restructure what the Bible actually says to fit their lack of understanding and awareness because of the fact that they don't have the Apocrypha. They took it out. What happens if you take stuff out of the Bible? You get confused. You lose confidence. I'm not sure. I really don't know. I'm confused. You know, it harbors fear, engenders fear, and problems, emotional and psychological problems, not only in the individual, but in the home, in the workplace, in the community, and in these so-called churches, the assemblies, so to speak, man.
And
I wasn't going to get into this apocrypha thing, but it's becoming very, very clear to me by what these gentlemen are saying and the way they're saying it, that they don't have the benefits of the apocrypha. Okay,
yeah, I've talked a lot about how the New Testament is full of passages like 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, where they're trying to comfort those Christians because they were worried about some of that. Like, am I going to go down there, or my family's already dead, or my brother or whatever, he died already, he's up there, or is he down there? When are we going? All this stuff. So a lot of that was to clear it up. And what you really don't see, like you said, is you don't see any time at all taken to this concept of live people vanishing. Mm-hmm. The only place that I hear people really try to argue that from is, for instance, like I said, 1 Thessalonians 4. And there may be one other passage. But other than those two verses in the entire of all of Scripture, there's literally no place that talks about people that are alive going anywhere or vanishing.
That's what I mean. You see, the Apocrypha actually talks about this. And I'm going to show you that. The Bible of the Protestant Reformation, the 66 books, just lends itself. When you take stuff out of the Bible, you take things out of the Bible, it leaves a hole in your soul, bro. You got to have that Apocrypha too. The Apocrypha was, and will always be canonical.
Or anything like that. The concept, as far as I'm concerned, in the literature of that time period, simply didn't exist. All of it had to do with the resurrection, like you said. And that concept, by the way, is in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which also has no notion of any kind of harpazo or...
See, they're alluding to Josephus, Dead Sea Scrolls, Wikipedia, what's the other thing? And I've done it. It's okay to use other sources, but you got to have the actual source intact in its fullness in order to utilize those extra biblical sources properly, like Strong's concordance and what have you.
Or rapture type thing. But all through the Dead Sea Scrolls, they're talking about the resurrection. And of course, what do we know about the
Dead Sea Scrolls? That's another one.
The Pharisees. They're the ones that didn't think that the resurrection was going to happen, right?
Right.
They denied it. They denied a lot of spiritual aspects of the faith of Judaism. So to me, that's the picture we should have.
This Protestant Bible, this limited Protestant Bible, does not lend itself to the salvation of an individual. Okay? Without the Apocrypha, This is what you get. This right here, this is what you get. Without the Apocrypha, whether you're a futurist or a preterist, Christian, Catholic, Messianic, uh, uh, Jewish, or Roman, even the Roman Catholic, they took out 7 books from the Apocrypha in their Bible. Okay?
Have of those verses like you're talking about. It's about the resurrection of the dead, and it has probably zero to do with live people popping out of their clothes. And
well, I was just thinking about it too, like that if you think about what Jesus said, he's like, a servant's not greater than his master.
You see, the rapture is true. It's written about in the Bible. And he said there's only 2 verses which allude to that in the Bible. That's their Bible. That's not the full Bible. That's not including the Apocrypha. That's where the problem lies, right there, man.
It's like, what happened to me is going to happen to you, and like, you're not going to enter the kingdom of the God how you are. So you need to die. Like, you need to die, and then you need to be resurrected in order to get into heaven. And I was thinking about it, like, so when David is prophesying in the Psalm, I think it's Psalm 16, and he's saying he's not going to let his anointed ones suffer corruption. So that means he didn't rot in the grave. So he died, and then he is resurrected. In the same way, when Paul's saying that we got to take off this corruptible and put on incorruption.
Yep.
So I don't think that God looked.
Just stand aside right here. He died on the 14th. 3 days later, he rose on the first day of the week. Which is the 17th. That's enough to make you think a little bit. You look at Luke chapter 6, verse 1, it helps to pour light of understanding on that idea. 14, 15, 16, that's 3 days, 3 nights. Early, on the 17th, the first day of the week, he rose from the dead. He was raised from the dead. All right?
Looks at our bodies as corrupted right now. But maybe he was saying in the same way that we would.
And Christians, they celebrate the resurrection. They call it Easter or Bunny or something like that. That's Osteroth or something. We're not commanded to celebrate the resurrection or observe that as a holy day. The first day of the week, the 17th, is not a holy day. It's an ordinary, regular work day. That's another thing.
Would have corrupted bodies when we die, and then we are given.
Well, here's the way I see that, JT. I think when we compare the material world to God, it is corruption.
Oh yeah.
So to me, it's like
this holiday season, Paleo Valley Superfood Golden Milk is buy one get one free. It only uses.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. What you're saying makes sense too, but I think that as far as God's concerned, the material world is corruption, and
when you don't have the Apocrypha, anything you say makes sense. Okay?
The picture that's kind of painted is like the closer to God you get, the more holy you get, and the further down towards hell you get, the more corrupt.
What is holiness? That's another dichotomy right there. What is holiness?
Corrupt everything gets.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the structure.
The law is holy and good.
Of the universe that he created. And so, yeah, those verses are key. 1 Corinthians 15 is where that is. corruption cannot put on incorruption. That's why we have to die. And a verse that I ran across the other day, and of course I'd read it.
He's right. But think about the three holy children in Daniel. They were cast into the lake of fire. And the king, he said to his advisors, he said, didn't we throw 3 people into the fire? How come I see 4 and one of them looks like the Son of God? He looks like the Son of Man. How did this king know what the Son of Man looked like? How did this king know what the Son of God would look like? Okay? He called them out. He said, come on out of there. They walked out of there, and there was not a hair of their head or any part of their clothing burnt up, and there was no smell of smoke on them, yo. So Gog Magog can be likened to that furnace. It was so hot that the men that led the 3 holy children into it died from the heat. That's how hot that furnace was. It was made so hot, like never before. So when the Gog Magog thing pop off, which is going to be very, very soon, we don't got to worry about dying. Dying is a concept that applies to the heathens, the pagans. That don't apply to us, believers. You know?
Many times and didn't really.
There's no such thing as death for us, yo. There's a problem with these two. I'm going to get off of this here. All right. I can't watch anymore. I'm going to just show you what I was talking about with regard to Second Ezra and how it relates to the Gog Magog event. If you go, this is the standard, this is the Protestant version here. And we're at www.kingjamesbibleonline.org. O-R-G. If we click on the standard here, it says King James Version, King James Bible. But if we click on the 1611, the original that was originally published, this is the one that has the Apocrypha in it. I don't know if you knew that or not. At this website, there's 2 different versions of the King James Bible at this website. One of them is the Protestant version, which is the King James Bible that the Protestants use. It's a standard, and it contains 66 books. And then we have the 1611, which was originally published in 1611. This contains the Apocrypha. Let's click on it and see what I'm talking about. Go to the index. You go down. Let me bring that up on the screen. I'm sorry. Make sure it's on the screen here. Okay. So here we are. Right? We're at the 1611 King James Bible. Here's the 66 books. It shows the index of all 66 books and the number of chapters in them. Okay? There's the Psalms, 150 Psalms. There's Isaiah, 66 books, what have you. Then you have Malachi. There's the 66 books of the Bible. Here's the New Testament on the right side here. Revelation, 22 chapters. Okay. Now, it's not showing the index of the Apocrypha for some reason. You have to click here. It's asking a question. There's a question mark. Are you looking for the Apocrypha books list? Click on that, and here they are. First or third Esdras. Second or fourth Esdras. Tobit. Judith. Additions to Esther. The Wisdom of Solomon. The Book of Ecclesiasticus. The book in the Standard Bible is called Ecclesiastes. The one here in the Apocrypha is called Ecclesiasticus, and it's also known as Sirach, Sirach. Okay, Baruch, which was Jeremiah's secretary or helper, assistant. The letter of Jeremiah, the prayer of Azariah, Susanna, Bel and the dragon, the prayer of Manasseh. Now, the three holy children, I believe, is this one here, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have my Apocrypha handy. I believe this one here is the one that speaks about the three holy children and what happened to them. Okay? Well, maybe it says the prayer of Azariah. I can't remember. But the current Apocrypha, it's called the three holy children. Let me see if I can find it here. Hold on a second. Where is it? Here's my Apocrypha. Okay, here it is. All right. Right. Praise God, man. Okay. The Song of the Three Holy Children is listed here after Baruch. So you have the history of Susanna, Bel and the dragon, the prayer of Manasseh, Susanna, Bel and the dragon, the rest of Esther, which is up here. The rest of Esther. Here it is, additions to Esther. The Song of the Three Holy Children. And then the prayer of Manasseh. Then you have the last two books, which deal with the Maccabees, the Levitical tribe of the Maccabees, first and second Maccabees. Okay? Christ read and studied all of these books of the Apocrypha, which were available and part of the Bible back then to the Jews in the temple. Okay? He celebrated the Feast of the Dedication, which is also called Hanukkah, and it was established by these brothers right here, first and second Maccabees. The destruction of Nicanor is another holy day that these brothers were used by God to establish for us. And the day of Simon Maccabees. That is another holy day that we celebrate from there's 3 holy days that these gentlemen here, these Levitical tribe of the Levites, actually established for the nation of the Israelites. Christ kept these holy days. If you read John 10:22 and 23 and 24, the dedication was actually started by Solomon when he finished building the temple, and they celebrated for a whole week or 2 weeks. And on the 8th day, he sent the people away. Okay? So we celebrate the Feast of the Dedication for 8 days. Just in similar fashion as the Feast of Tabernacles. 8 days. Okay? So this letter of Jeremiah, let me see if that's the one I'm talking about. This is the letter of Jeremiah, copy of the epistle which Jeremiah sent unto them which were led captive into Babylon. Sins, hold on now. Yea, therefore you cannot save themselves. Sure on every side, their faces are black. Yeah, serve them. Just trying to see if if this is the song of the 3 older children. Hold on. Let me see here. Hold on. Wait, hold on a second here. Right. Okay. There's the Most High, y'all. Right. It is the song of the 3 holy children, and they walked in the midst of the fire. Let's find that. Let's go back and find that there. Praise the Most High for a second here. Hold on. Bring this back here. Okay. Let's see if this is it. The prayer of Azariah. I think this might be it. Yeah. This is the song. The song of the 3 holy children is also known as the prayer of Azariah. Okay? In the Apocrypha. And this is free. You can read and study the Apocrypha for free, yo. If you have access to the internet at home, or if you go to the library or Starbucks or McDonald's or Publix or any place where you can sit and have a drink or a cup of coffee, there's free internet everywhere. All right, the library, you can go in there and go to KingJamesBibleOnline.org and click on that 1611, and you'll be able to read the whole Apocrypha for free. 14 books, baby. And this is a prayer of one of the 3 holy children, giving God thanks and glorifying him for having delivered them out of that fiery furnace. Okay? So, hey, man. Now, we're going to go to the part of this book, the Apocrypha, that I wanted to show you. That is 2nd Esdras. And this sheds light on the Armageddon and the Gog-Magog dichotomy, which these 2 gentlemen in the beginning of that video was having a problem understanding. They had a problem understanding this. And they admitted it. Why is that? Because they don't have the Apocrypha, ladies and gentlemen. Let's look at it right now. Okay? Here we go. The second Esdras. You have to click on here, which it says click to standard English. Okay? So that you don't see the D's and the thous and all that so much. But we go on down to verse. This is chapter 7 of the second book of Esdras. And the angel is speaking to Esdras in this chapter. I believe it's Raphael. Verse 26. And behold, the time shall come that these tokens which I have told thee shall come to pass. Here's a clue. And the bride shall appear, and she coming forth shall be seen, that now is withdrawn from the earth. What does that remind you of, ladies and gentlemen? That is the rapture. Think about it. The bride removed from the earth, and she's returning with her bridegroom. After a 7-year wedding feast. Okay. 27. And whosoever is delivered from the foresaid evils shall see my wonders. This is talking about those 3 holy children. They saw God's wonders. They were delivered out of the fiery furnace. Okay? And we're going to see God's wonders. That's right. 28. For my son Jesus, now we're talking about a book that they say does not belong in the Bible, that does not talk about the Christian perspective. It is not part of the overall canon of the Word. 28. For my son Jesus shall be revealed with those that be with him. Then we which are alive shall rise with those that have been raised from the dead, and we shall be with the Lord forever. Those that be with him. You know, you're asking yourself, if the rapture already happened, why am I still here then? Did I get left behind? No, you didn't. You actually didn't. And I'll tell you why here in a second. 28. For my son Jesus, make sure that's up on the screen. All right. Praise God now. For my son Jesus, okay, shall be revealed with those that be with him, the bride. And they that remain shall rejoice within 400 years. What's this talking about right here? 400 years. Remain where? Remain what? Those that remain. What's he talking about? He's talking about the little season after his millennial reign. 400 years. It's not saying it's going to be 400 years. It's saying that it's going to be inside of 400 years. That's a little season. So this verse right here alludes to the end of the millennial reign. And those that remain faithful to the memory of the millennium and the Christ that ruled with an iron rod, a rod of iron for those 1,000 years, because he beat the crap out of those unruly nations that refuse to adhere to God's commandments, eh? You wonder why they take this out of the Bible. This is the reason. They don't want you to know this. They want you to be confused like those two gentlemen about Armageddon and Magog and Magog. Huh? So, hey man, you don't have to be confused. You can know the truth, and the truth will set you free. You don't have to have fear about the future. You were not left behind. You are remaining faithful to the memory of the millennium and of the Christ that ruled during that millennium. You are a descendant of the many, many people that remained faithful. They were delivered. Okay? They remained faithful. If we emulate our faithful uh, 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 ancestors from that time, by remaining faithful now to this truth, we will be delivered. And rejoice within 400 years. The enemy is released after the 1,000 years, and a short season is let loose to wreak havoc and mischief and deceit. But those that remain faithful will rejoice within 400 years. You know what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen? After these years, 29, shall my son Christ die, and all men that have life, and the world shall be turned into the old silence for 7 days, like as in the former judgments, so that no man shall remain. How many times in Scripture is there more than one prophecy within one verse? The Bible says that the Scriptures have more than one meaning many times. You know, I'm sure you've come across uh, sections of Scripture that say one thing, but they mean more than one thing. You know, all praises. I can give you some examples, but I'm going to just stick with this right here for now. And the world, verse 30, after these years, verse 29, shall my son Christ die. After which years? Okay. It's talking about the millennium. It's talking about the time before the millennium, the 7 year before the millennium, which was what? The timing. They messed up the timeline. These social engineers so badly that it's almost indecipherable. But that's why God wrote this Apocrypha, for us to decipher it. He's given us the keys. I've given you the keys to the kingdom. If you take important aspects of the code out, you cannot unlock the mystery. You got to have the entirety of the keys, all of them, the entire code. Okay? Right. So, whosoever. Then after these years, which years is he alluding to here? Shall my son Christ die? Let's talk about the generations. When you read in Matthew about the 14 generations, blah blah blah. If you look at the little season, the 1,000-year reign, how many generations are contained in 1,000 years? 14. Generation is 70 years, according to the Bible. There's 14 generations within 1,000 years. Okay? So after these years shall my son Christ die. You have the 14 generations from David to Christ. And then you have the 14 generations from the beginning of the reign of Christ until the beginning of the little season of Satan, which is 1,000 years, approximately, right in there. So after these years shall my son Christ die is not taking away from the flow of what this is speaking about here, because we have the rest of the Bible to fall back on in order to gain the understanding of what these years is. Like in Matthew, the genealogy, the 14 generations. Okay? And what happens after the little season, which is less than 400 years long? That's what it's saying here. Personally, I believe that the little season began in what they would term 1666. But since they've added 1,000 years to the narrative, their accepted historical narrative, it began in 666. His number is 600 He was released in 1666. If you add 400 years to that, what do you get? Go ahead, check it out. The Bible says to count. Math is allowed. We're not using numerology. We don't advocate the use of numerology. We do advocate the use of mathematics. Okay? And God does advocate and admonish us to use mathematics. Let him that hath understanding count the number, for it is the number of a man. And his number is 600 That's the year in which he is released back into the general human population. And we're talking about the seed of the serpent. That's another topic. I'm not going to get into that right now, because that's where these two brothers that we were watching over on the other side over here when this video began, that's where they are again missing the boat. Okay? The Christian, preterist, messianic, evangelical, preterist, all only see a spiritual being getting locked up for 1,000 years. They don't see the human component of the seed, the lineage. Christ had a lineage. The seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent had a lineage. Went to Cain, Nimrod, blah, 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 on down. Herod, all the way. You know what I'm saying? So these are the people, the children of disobedience, which are loose in the earth now. And they're going to shortly bring about their own demise. You can see the writing on the wall, ladies and gentlemen, if you watch the news. You can see the writing on the wall. They're about ready to implement their own demise. Okay? And that is the difference. Armageddon happens after the 7-year tribulation and after the 7-year wedding feast of the Lamb. He returns with his bride, stops Armageddon. This is in Matthew. Talks about no flesh should have been saved if he didn't shorten that thing. He didn't put a stop to it. Okay? I think it's Matthew 19 or some such. I forget exactly. You can Google it. Okay? He puts stop to it and then implements and establishes his government in the Palestina on this old earth, under this old heaven, in the old city of the Jerusalem over there, quote unquote, Middle Earth. It's temporary. When he came back with his bride and established his kingdom, that wasn't the new heaven and the new earth. That wasn't the new Jerusalem over there. All right? And that's where the confusion comes in with these brothers and sisters. And, we'll get into this further and further, but if you have not read the Apocrypha, please do. I'm going to put an end to this here in a minute. Today is the 16th of Ziph. It is the second Sabbath after the first. It is not the day of Simon. That was my mistake. Next Sabbath on the 23rd will be the day of Simon. It's a double celebration. It'll be the Holy Sabbath and also a feast day commemorating Simon Maccabeus. Okay, there'll be a combined Sabbath feast day on the 23rd, which will be next Sunday. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we love you. We want this truth to hammer down. This hammer time. We got to get this thing up in here. The old silence, the beginning, the original creation took 7 days. This new heaven and new earth, new Jerusalem, is going to take 7 days. And what happens before that takes place? The second resurrection. It speaks of it in 30, 31, 32, and 33. The great white throne judgment. 33. And the Most High shall appear upon the seat of judgment. And gives out rewards. So, no, you've not been left behind, and you've not forfeited your reward. You will have eternal life. Christ promised you eternal life. You have remained faithful. Give him thanks. Give him glory.